Your topic about national digital currencies, yes?
Correct. And cybersecurity. Yeah, both of them.
Okay, finally we're here. Okay, now we leave, and our guest today is Fernando Martina with the topic national digital currencies and security on DLT that can prevent. Okay, the topic is national digital currencies and DLT that can prevent depression and recession. Fernando Martina, CTO at Norris. Fernando, your turn. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you for anyone watching. So I'm going to follow you through a presentation. Yeah. But first of all, very quickly, I'm a career CTO, and then I left the corporate world. And I've been into cybersecurity since I was very young, quite young. And I'll talk about teenager days. So, and then of course, very early adopter of Bitcoin and DLTs and blockchain, quite early actually, So I'm just going to follow you something that is quite interesting. I start to think about this in 2015. 2016 with my co-founder, and you'll understand a bit more. Yeah. So let me just enable the PowerPoint presentation. Let me share this screen, and I'm going to follow you through. I'm sorry, I'm not a usual Windows user, so I've got here a virtual box. So I'm gonna share the screen, and then I will enable now the PowerPoint. Okay, so I will just go through these slides very quickly, and just to focus a little bit, going back a bit time in history, yeah, just so you follow you through. There's kind of a way of thinking about this that I want to follow you through, yeah. And the topic is national digital currency, DLT, and I'll touch base in cybersecurity. This is where we're really strong, and that's what we do at Norris, right? So, 2007, this man came up with something that kind of changed the world tremendously. He came up with an iPhone. There was mobile phones before. There was phones for many years. So it was not really an invention, nothing new. It's just innovation. Yeah, a better phone, an ecosystem of apps. That's the key thing. An ecosystem of apps. In 2009, the first Bitcoin was mined. Yeah, as we all know. And then in 2010, this man came again with the iPad. By that time, there was a huge ecosystem around apps, and anyone could produce an app. So you can imagine this started to become a security headache for a lot of people as well. Yeah. And the iPad just enhanced that, which is, a lot of people at the corporate level start to want to use iPads and apps for this and apps for that. Yeah. And then cloud first, 2011. This cloud first strategy. started to be implemented by most of the corporations out there. Then mobile first strategy. There was Facebook, the first one to adopt, and everyone came after. And then what all of these made was a very, very well-connected world. You know, anything that we start to interact with in the world, you know, and a lot of the data start to go to the cloud. Yeah, and you know, the explosion was really then with Internet of Things, 2014. And that's when everything that we really interact with in the world started to be really connected. And we start to make these things more clever, you know, get the AI on top of it. So at this point, it started to be really an incredible headache for anyone that's trying to protect environments. Yeah. And at that time, it was then when cryptocurrencies just start really to come out. Yeah, a lot of adopters at this time, and then by 2016, cryptocurrencies were just out there. You know, we all know that, and there was an explosion of a lot of other things as well, including ICOs. But the critical thing was the blockchain and DLT achieved what is called the early adopters phase. Yeah, where about I think it was Accenture came up with a number, you know, that came up with about 13.5% of financial institutions who are already trying DLT and blockchain. Yeah, believe it or not, there are reports about that, and he did an extensive study about that. And so, you know, he achieved the early adopters. Of course, you know, it's not like full production. You know how it is in corporations when it comes with early adopters. They're just going to try things and see what they can get in terms of innovation. Yeah. So a few years later, then digital currencies and more around national digital currencies start to be really taking a bit more serious. Yeah, there was a lot of good things that they could do that, and that's when a few countries like China and then Russia went on the bandwagon, and a few others, they start to go adopting this because that gives them a lot of control. Yeah, and it's perfect for this type of states. Yeah, and I don't want to get into politics here. Yeah, it's not my part of my brief, but and of course there were other countries trying to prevent this, obviously, you know. So going a bit further and talking about these digital currencies, you know, tax evasion is a huge problem in countries. Yeah, and this is a massive problem, you know, for a lot of for some of the big countries, and even smaller countries usually suffer the most, actually, you know. So it is possible to actually collect every single cent of tax from the taxes, you know, and the reason is because there is technology today like DLT and blockchains that allows you to achieve that, and I'll explain you a little bit. Inflation is also a huge problem, and controlling inflation, it's becoming a bit more difficult, just a tiny bit, you know. As the world moves so fast, it starts to become a huge problem, and I think with this pandemic, we're going to face a few issues around this. Yeah. So inflation also can control inflation better. Yeah, it will be able to control inflation better, and I'll explain you why now. So think about. I mean, this is a Merkle tree. A lot of you probably know what a Merkle tree is, but think about a national ledger, you know, or a combination of ledgers. And with a concept with Merkle trees, yeah, they will have a main chain. On that main chain, just think about this. Every single person that is born gets a unique identifier that is your hash key. Yeah, just a series of numbers that identifies you forever on that chain at birth and after death. Yeah. So think about every single citizen having that unique identifier in a chain, in a national main chain. Yeah. Every single organization, entities, all as well getting your number and getting in that main chain. So by this time you have every single citizen and every single organization. No public, non-public, doesn't matter. NGO, doesn't matter. Every single one will get one, and it gets in that main chain. So let's talk about currency, traditional currency. Let's not go before when it was gold and all that, but paper money start to be the way that we evolved really with currency, until we start to use more technology, with cards, credit cards, and then we move from that to phones, yeah, and then eventually we start to use Bitcoin, yeah, and we have wallets on phones, yeah. So, not just on phones, it could be in your watch, yeah, right, or whatever portable device you have. So we start to rely a lot less in cash, yeah. But let's stick to a card. A card, you see that little chip that you have in your card, there's really cryptography, okay? And by the way, you can't really hack this chip, yeah? You can do other things with cards and so on, but actually hack the actual chip, it's not possible. Today, it's not possible, yeah? That I know of, okay? So think about this as well, yeah? They store a lot of the information there in that chip, yeah? Bear that in mind. So one of the things we start to do is use a lot of NFC on phones and on devices, and we do a lot of those transactions, yeah? So in fact, China is removing paper money for quite some time. In China, as most of you probably know, 87-88% of the transactions are through an app on their phones, okay? So there's I have a story about that actually, but it is around people not being able to do calculations on giving you a change when you get to Starbucks there in China. But we use WeChat, right? And WeChat has already enabled the digitalization of transactions, which is good in one way, yeah? The other way, that data ends up in the government, obviously, So think now about these Merkle trees, yeah, and side chains. So think about your currency, your national digital currency becomes a side chain of that main chain. You already have all citizen, every single org, as a unique identifier there, then you enable as a side chain your national digital currency. But you enable any other currencies, and cryptocurrencies as well. It doesn't matter, crypto RMB, or call it whatever you want, yeah, or Bitcoin. They will all go there. This is being implemented in a few countries, yeah. I can tell you that right now. So in fact, every single thing that happens with currencies, your national digital currency, or any other currencies, it becomes visible. It has to become visible, and they will enforce that it becomes visible, because every single entity and every single person is in that chain, right? Identified in that chain. So now think about this as well, because you have that digital currency, all your earnings, including your salaries, now are going as a side chain, yeah, into a unique identifier as well. It could be your wallet, your bank account, it doesn't really matter. But because you are already identified, the bank is identified, your employee is identified in the main chain. So now all your earnings, yeah, will go in that main chain as well. Yeah, it doesn't matter what they are. They will have to go. So because everyone, like I said, is identified there, then every single thing that you manufacture, every single thing that you import, every single thing that you produce in the country and that you sell in that country, because people have to buy things, right? So that will come as a transaction identified, yeah, by someone that pay X. So think about the power of this, yeah? You can have all of those identified in a main chain. Yeah, there you go. A government that knows at every second what happens in the economy. Every single thing that is produced, every single thing that is spent, and it can do it almost near real time once this is implemented. Yeah, quite powerful. And so then you probably think, what about supply chains? Yeah, well, supply chains, you can just look at them in a different way, because, being a side chain for food, where you have fruit as a side chain, vegetables have a side chain, it will go right down to the producer, right? Then you could have very recent topic, PPEs. Very easy to go right down to whoever are all the people involved in this type of transactions, as side chains. You can go as many levels as you want. Even toilet paper. I know it was a joke, but it's a reality. You could then define it as a side chain specific things that are quite critical to your country, to your supply. I don't think this is critical, but I leave up to people whatever they fancy. So ability to track and trace, is achieved across the entire country. Yeah, they can identify critical supply chains and manage in a different way, even with smart contracts if they really want to, and be prepared. And they can automate supply policies, which is quite essential for any type of policies that you want to grab. So think about this: all earnings, all expenditure from everyone, every order. You can now collect every single cent of tax. You can control the inflation because in real time, you know what people are producing, or people are earning, or people are spending. Yeah. Again, automation of economic policy is possible. Yeah. So fiscal, there are only three economic policies: fiscal policy. And you can do with fiscal policies, you cannot automate and changes in tax and shifts of aggregation. There's so many things you can do in near real time. What that ensures is that a continuous equilibrium of aggregate supply, and aggregate demand, because usually, that's what really dictates inflation. And that's what is essential to have a balanced economy. An obvious positive GDP with only a small inflationary increase. So all of these policies can be automated through smart contracts. We as a government, we could just sit back and see it happening in real time and stop it if we really want to intervene manually. But all of these we will be able to automate these. So quite powerful when you have all of this big picture. And China is working on this. As you know, they released their digital currency, and they will get to a point where they want full control, and they will achieve this. So controlling recession, like I said, let's go through the deeper. Aggregate supply and aggregate demand balanced. Tick box. You can freeze the entire economy and stop markets immediately. Think about, you freeze something in time and then you defrost and it will continue. It just stops so much of the suffering and a lot of the people trying to really push the market down and then buy it low and double your fortune, etc. All the things that we know happens when we have this type of crisis. And then activation of critical supply chains, because you can track all of that. You can just activate all of those and just enforce either through smart contracts or actual contracts you had with people in those supply chains. And of course, you can automate parachute dropping of cash. But because remember, at that point, everybody has that card where you have all of that, your digital currency, or which is really a wallet, or a wallet on your digital device, doesn't matter. So the money could just be dropped to every single citizen for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, until the crisis stopped, until the pandemic or the virus is gone, without affecting and without causing a recession. Technology today, it's the willing that is needed. So we at Nawaris, just very quickly, I know you were running out of time. Nawaris, we spotted what we could do with some of these technologies, and what we achieved was a totally distributed cybersecurity ecosystem with a little bit of swarm AI. So we have swarms as well and distributed AI. The problem with cybersecurity: single points of failure. It takes 101 days on average to detect a breach on any system. Sometimes 180 days, sometimes 270. Depends on where you are on the planet. And of course, very, very costly compliance and audits, and compliance doesn't work today, because they have to check every single device on a network of 20,000 devices. It just doesn't work. They choose 3 or 5, they check if everything is okay. If it is, then you get a stamp and give me whatever money for the audit. Yeah, that's how it works. So 35 years, nothing changed. It's a massive problem. 3 trillion we're losing every year. It's going to shift to 6 trillion. All of these people being faced tremendous with cyber attacks, but this was the biggest prize winner. Yeah, 1.5 trillion US dollars transferred in IP, just in one go. Yeah, you can Google it. So the solution, we distributed, decentralized. We have agents running over every single machine. And what you need is consensus from all the devices on your network to be able to verify if the device is still healthy or not on your network. Yeah. So when an attacker tries to compromise that device, if that device doesn't have the same status as it had the previous second, then what happens is, there's no consensus on the entire network, and that device can happen a few things. It can actually be segregated. It could just be a command and critical system shut down the device. So in less than a few seconds, a second or two, the attacker is just taken off from the network. And the attacker could actually put whatever they want on the device, yeah, but we don't really care. At some point, we don't need to know what something is to do something, because we don't use the traditional methods on cybersecurity. Yeah, we just take a baseline, we get that into our DLT. That baseline is represented as a hash key. When that device is compromised, the next hash key is different, so therefore device is taken offline. Yeah. And it can be auto yield. We have capability dealing with high availability environments, cloud systems, and so on. Yeah. What this means is we now change the way an attacker. Before we've done this, the attackers were always with a strategic advanced. We brought this to the same level or maybe below, because now we are here at the top. And they need to play to catch up. How are they going to break a blockchain? Yeah. So that's the critical thing that we've achieved. And by the way, we can detect malware, cyber weapons, and what's difficult to detect today is cyber weapons. You cannot detect unknowns. Yeah, we can detect unknowns today by doing this type of approach and prevent really data loss. So anything related with data, as long as you tell us what to look for, what is the data what is the data set, it doesn't matter, database, anything that tries to interfere with that and changes anything is detecting less than a second. Yeah, so that is the critical thing that we achieve. Why? Because we thought a lot about how blockchain, DLT, Merkle trees can help you, and we are prepared for this new world that I mentioned. That is going to happen with digital currency. You have to think about using Merkle trees and the sidechain to be able to fit into that new world that is coming soon to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Yes.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
You can ensure, please. Yes. Okay. Everything is done. Thank you for your time. It's really a pleasure to hear you. Fernando, I have to say you goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
See you later. Yes. And our next speaker is Alexander Subodin with the speech about securing network infrastructure is not only technical issue. The word is yours. Alexander, go ahead. Turn on the mic, please.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Excellent. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, for sure.
So today I'm going to present you a topic about the network security. Let me share the screen. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, let's do it this way. Yeah, today I'm going to talk about secure network infrastructure. Yeah, some words about the company. I'm the CEO of the ByteSlice GmbH. It's a security company focusing on the security services like penetration testing, vulnerability scanning, source code auditing, and so on. And yeah, let's start. from my experience, if we are talking about the enterprise security, the first thing we have to decide, or we have to define the company attack surface. Usually I split both stuff in technology and staff. That means that it's several really technical issues like vulnerabilities, some misconfiguration, and some attacks related to the staff of the company. It could be phishing campaign. It could be some attacks related to the people working on the company. And if you see the right part, I will not focus today on this one, because we already know that employees working and several contractors, suppliers, service providers, and so on. But we will focus on the technology on the left part. If you see the list there, you can for sure say, okay, that's usually some of the components we as a company need to run our business. We have to use these technologies. You have external resources like website, maybe you're using mobile apps, or you development mobile apps. You have in several domains, and for sure, some of them will also configure some subdomains for several purposes. And the network security not only related to the resources exposed to the internet. We also need to talk about the internal infrastructure. If we have we doing a business and we have an enterprise, you have somehow to manage the permissions, you have somehow to manage the users. And usually in this area, in this infrastructure, you will deploy something like Windows Active Directory just to allow you to control all the requirements, so be compliant to your security policies defined by company. You will definitely use some corporate applications which are really, let's say, which are really needed to do your business. And for sure, the cloud is not a new technology, but from my experience, more and more companies, even on the CISO or CTO level, decide to move from the traditional internal infrastructure into the cloud. AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud are usually providers for such technologies. And you also have maybe software department, which if we're speaking about the developers, we need to think about what they're doing. The final goal to develop an application which will run in production, but they also put some systems required for the processes itself, like for the development processes, for testing purposes, and so on. And if we are thinking about the modern world, we also need to ensure that some of their coworkers can work remotely, and you will provide some service on that. All the stuff on the left side, it's only related to the network attack surface. And what we can do as a company to ensure that we really don't missing anything. The first thing we need to decide what is our assets, what is our IT systems which we are gonna to protect, because without this knowledge we are not able to do anything. We are not able to create any plans to create remediation plans or securing some assets, right? So, and if we think about the company assets, from my experience, it's a very difficult topic, because if you will go to the IT department, they may provide you a couple of hints where you can find information, but usually it's really challenging today to get the entire list of all digital assets used by the company, because some companies having not one IT providers, several, and the IT providers are responsible for updating the documentation and providing it to the customers. The companies sometimes don't really know which IP ranges they're using, or which IP ranges are issued to the company, or to regarding subdomains. It's something like, yeah, it's your responsibility to use DNS or to create some subdomains. Maybe it could be for marketing purposes, it could be for testing purposes, doesn't matter. But you have to put sometimes in this topic, just for to be aware what systems are there, which of them are exposed, and which applications are used by the enterprise. So, and the next question would be on who is responsible for that. If I said previously, it's really challenging to create such list, and it's really challenging to keep it updated. Who is responsible for that? Is it a responsibility for CIO? Should he be aware about all the technologies and about all the digital assets of the company? Maybe it's CTO. Maybe the man who is responsible for security should also somehow be responsible for asset management, right? Or maybe it's some of coworkers, or it's IT department, and maybe it's God. I don't know, but usually you cannot say, yeah, this or such person is really responsible. It's a corporate. It's a task of the company to decide how the company gonna to protect the digital assets, and the first goal to create the list of the targets which will be interesting for the attackers. So, what could be the solution for that? The first one, it's a methodology called OSINT. Is open source intelligence. That means that you're trying to go the same way what the attacker would do. They will not use Google and Bing to find your sources. They will use some other search engines for the purposes. For example, Shodan, it's a very famous service because you can just spend few minutes to define the ranges, to define the applications or the vulnerable applications. Let's imagine the situation. Yesterday or today, a new vulnerability has been discovered in Windows server. And what you need to do as an attacker, you just need to find a IP range of the company, go to the Shodan, put a single port number and say, hey, please show me all the systems running in this IP range in this country, and please show me the version number of the service. And you will find definitely some interesting targets where you can start with. You also, some companies sometimes underestimate the impact of putting additional information in certificate, because SSL certificate usually used to protect the data, like to establish an encrypted channel from from the client to the server, from customer to the let's say to the application. But the certificates also includes some sensitive information. Let's imagine the situation: you're using Cloudflare like a additional security service, and your goal to hide the systems behind Cloudflare. That means what you can do, you will put in front of your system Cloudflare services, and that should ensure that no one will exactly know the target IP address of your applications. But if you put the certificate information before including Cloudflare in your architecture or in your infrastructure, you may expose some sensitive information. And for me, if I exactly know, okay, you're using Cloudflare, it doesn't matter, because I can find a real IP address of your machine, and I can directly attack your digital asset without fighting with a security service like Cloudflare. And some other underestimated, let's say, underestimated risks or underestimated threats is meta information included in documents and images. You already you have seen several sites providing some documents for download, like it could be product information, it could be some technical guides, but all this information, whether it's PDF files or images, may also contain some meta information. That means if the attacker will be able to extract this information and match it with the company, match all the related information with company information, they can profit from that. I have seen that you will see some internal resources, IP addresses, names of the folders, and names of the folders sometimes may contain also sensitive information, like you will put like financial report for deal with the company, because with the company X, and no one really know as before that you're working with this company. It's the information which is only for internal usage, but not for the entire world. And the same, you can apply the same story to your coworkers. If you or your team using social media and putting some digital documents there, it could be images, documents, for sure you can use the same methodology to extract this information and use it for preparation of user attacks. So I just explained the small part which is a threat for the companies which have countless exposed IT systems, and how you can use all the available tools right now without really doing let's say active scans against the company infrastructure, because active scans against the company infrastructure is something what company could easily detect. But this one, like using additional search engines or like extracting meta information, it's something what is hidden. It's not really that what you can monitor. It's not really that what you can directly detect, and that's the threat on that. So And what the company can do.
Alexander.
Yeah.
Yeah, please a little bit accelerate because we're running out of time.
Okay. It's the last slide. Okay. So and you definitely want to know what you can do against that, right? The first part would be to do the same stuff what hackers would do, right? Like asset discovery. That means uses the same methodology or the same techniques to discover your meta information, to discover your digital asset, and to secure them before the bad guys will find them. You can use vulnerability scanning. It's like an approach, automatic. It's related to the planned and automatic scanning of your targets. And these scanners will tell you, okay, such system has a technical vulnerability, and you have to tell such information to your admin, which can fix it. So, or you can hire security experts, which can do perform penetration testing on your systems and tell you how the hackers will attack your web applications, your IT infrastructure, and how we can fix all the identified vulnerabilities by the attackers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. Please turn off the presentation, your presentation. My pleasure to have you here today. And I see our next speaker is already here in this room. Mikko, nice to meet you. Yes, turn on your camera.
Sure. Hello. Hi.
Hello. Yes, very interesting. Too many times we don't see each other. Nice to meet you here on this greatest conference. Yes, we are talking about the digital world. And here is Mikko Matsumura. He's going to talk about blockchain state of the union and personal cyber securities. The stage is yours. Your turn.
Great. Thank you very much. So can you see me okay? It looks like my video froze.
Yes, a little bit, but you can continue the conversation because I think it's converted in the right way.
Okay, let me switch.
Let's try to.
Okay, see what happens. I guess
please. It will be great to turn on your camera.
Yeah, no problem. Let's just see.
Because we are on air and this is the video content.
Yeah. I'm just trying to fix it. Actually, I think it got stuck.
We have a time. Don't worry about it.
I may need to reconnect. Hold on.
Yes, we can do it now. Yes, we have a time. We have a minute or two. It's okay. Yes, at this moment we are on air, but they do everything now. Yes, you are here.
Okay.
Yes, on another view.
Yes, I switched to my other camera, so hopefully that'll work.
Very good looking.
Thank you very much. Yes, a different setup entirely. Well, good. So my hope was to share with you a couple of things. One of which is actually the crypto blockchain state of the union. So I'm very excited to share that with you. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about, I know the last speaker talked about cybersecurity. I'd like to share a little bit about personal cybersecurity, which I think is important, not just to protect your company, but also to protect yourself. Obviously, if you're involved in the Bitcoin movement, you may actually also want to protect your holdings. So these are also very important topics. So how should we proceed? Do you want to do should I hold forth, or are we going to have an interview, or how do you want to discuss?
No. It's not. It's your speech. You have 20 minutes. You can share your presentation if you have. Up to you. You have 20 minutes on air.
Wonderful. Yeah. So I don't have a specific slide presentation. What I'd like to do is just make a preface comment of about 10 minutes. And then afterwards, what I'd like to do is show you my website that relates to personal cybersecurity. So let's start with that. But I think at the beginning, what I'd like to talk about is the state of the blockchain union. So, if we really look at this, we're past 10 years in with Bitcoin. And, it's a very exciting time. Obviously, one of the things that's amazing to me is that the world and the industry are finally fully beginning to understand what Bitcoin is. And the thing that I think people need to understand is that Bitcoin is new. So, I think the fact that it took 10 years to figure it out is not unusual. So, for example, if you remember, as I do, the birth of the internet and the consumer internet, there are so many companies that had ideas, right? Oh, what is this going to be? And, I think a lot of the ideas were incorrect. So I think we're really going through the same evolution, and this evolution takes a little time. But I can tell you what has emerged. And I think that the way that people should understand Bitcoin, there's many ways to understand it, but I think the easiest, simplest way I'm explaining these days is it's really the bank of the internet, and it's owned by the users, right? So it's really pro rata ownership. So what it means is the more you use it, the more you become an owner of it, right? And the thing that's fascinating about this mindset is that it really powerfully creates a network effect, because the reason why this works is simple, which is that Bitcoin inherently disintermediates traditional banking institutions. So in a sense, it is a bankless bank. And so the question becomes, well, if it is a bank and a bankless bank, then who's profiting? And the great news is that the profiteers, there's no bank shareholders hiding somewhere, stealing your fees, giving you all kinds of problems. It's you. You're the user. You're the beneficiary, right? So the thing that I think has become clear is that it serves as a store of value, but also a hedge against government money printing and government currency instability. And I think in many countries, this becomes, I think, a key feature. So, when you look at some countries with unstable currency, then those citizens are now beginning to trade back and forth with Bitcoin, which is relatively stable, right? It's surprising to think that, but it's beneficial in that way. And so I think people are increasingly understanding that it's a hedge. And the thing that's great about that is it means that more people are beginning to understand it properly. I think that we had a phase where Bitcoin almost reached 20,000 US dollars, all-time high. During this phase, there were people who didn't understand it well and who thought that it was a get rich quick scheme. Right. I heard a tweet the other day. I read one that said that Bitcoin is not a get rich quick scheme. It is a don't get poor slowly scheme. Right. Which I like that, because in a way, right. And the thing that's funny is that if you look at the buying power of the US dollar as just an example currency, since 1913, it's decreased its buying power by almost 93%. Right. But when you say 1913, that's a long time ago. So what we're describing is this slow process of losing value, right? So it's a don't get poor slowly, right? So that's the mood, and it's a funny mood. But what does that mean? What it means is that it acts a bit like gold. And so, it's really about storing. And then, to me, there's two energies inside of it. One of them is the whale energy, which is basically this very rapid cycling. So every month or 2 months, you start to see it go. Typically these days, it's a channel between 9,000 US dollars and 6,000 US dollars, and it just kind of waves. There's waves, right? But the thing that's so funny is that people describe these waves in technical analysis. They see things like descending triangles. They see things like golden cross. They see all these structures, cup and handle formation, technical analysis, right? But to me, I think the best Bitcoiners ignore all of it. They ignore all of those things. What they're doing is they're basically doing a long-term buy and hold pattern, which is really what Warren Buffett actually says. Warren Buffett says, first of all, he says Bitcoin is rat poison. So he's not a fan of Bitcoin. But what he also says is he says that the best holding period is forever. So that's a great point, and it's a good point about Bitcoins, because there's people who are called hodlers who basically want to buy dips. And the thing that you can do is you can do on-chain analysis. So for example, if you go to something like CoinMarketCap, you can see There's a company called Into the Block that supplies on-chain analysis, and you can actually understand how many people are buying and selling, and how many people are in the money and how many people are out of the money, depending on the price. And the thing that's fascinating to learn is how many wallets never sell, right? They just keep buying a little more and then a little more and a little more, and they just never sell. They just keep buying a little more. Every time it dips, they buy a little more, right? And that class of owner is raising the floor, right? We're gradually ratcheting up the floor. And to me, this relates to a metric that I call 10-year moving average, right? It's a bit of a tongue in my cheek, because technical analysis people, they have like 7-day moving average and things like that. I jokingly call it 10-year moving average. So 10-year moving average suggests that the floor keeps getting higher and higher. So, I think that's really a big part. And, when I talk about the state of blockchain, there's so much time that I dedicate towards Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the grandmother of all the coins. Obviously, when you look at something like Ethereum, it's very proven, and programmable money is proven. And I think DeFi is proven. I think what's not proven in Ethereum as yet is like oracles. So I think extending DeFi to, what's called oracles is still subject to problems. And I think that, if you look at the Maker, which is one of the flagship properties inside of DeFi, they've had some problems, particularly related to oracles. So, I don't want to go too nerdy on that, but what I do want to say is I want to say that, what's important about systems involving trust and money is time, and proof, right? So that's what we're starting to see, the development of a foundation, and a foundation that's based on time and based on trust. So I think we're in a neat spot. I think we're in a good spot. So what I want to do is kind of push a little bit to help you kind of understand something that I really care quite a bit about. So what I want to do is I want to share sort of a website that I've been working on. So I've been working on this website. It's actually at safercrypto.org. And, this is kind of my own personal pet project. So I can tell you how it got born. So the way that this got born is when I was kind of early in the crypto revolution, I was actually at the airport on my way to Switzerland, and I got hacked. So basically what happened was, I got, there was a SIM swap, right? So my phone suddenly disconnected, and I started getting messages from my carrier, and they're like, oh, thank you for updating your SIM card, and stuff like that. I was like, okay, this is bad. And so what it led me to believe that in some ways the future of all these cryptographic assets, of Bitcoin, of Ethereum, of all the others, is dependent on having a better user experience and treating the users better. And I think one of the key points of treating users well is protecting their assets, right? So for me, have turned into a bit of a personal cybersecurity crusader, and I'm very passionate about people protecting themselves online. So, I built this website called safercrypto.org. It actually has, documents a bunch of threats. So whether the exchanges are being hacked or, all these different things, a 0-day flaw that affects 900 million iOS users, Bitcoins flowing from various exchange hacks, and all of these things. My friend Michael Turpin, who was SIM swapped by a 15-year-old kid who was in high school, whose parents, by the way, thought that he was great at playing video games. So this 15-year-old kid had so much money, and his parents were like, oh yeah, he won a lot of money playing video games. So fascinating news story. But the thing that I think is the beating heart of safercrypto.org is really just these mostly free and mostly open source products and tips and tricks of how you can kind of make yourself safer. Bitwarden, password manager, like all these different kind of scanners and tools that I've aggregated, all of which I personally am using. So I just wanted to kind of put the plug in. I think it sounds like we've probably got I've used my chunk of my time. So maybe time to hand off to the next set.
We have 3 minutes. It's okay. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, good. That will give me a great opportunity to finish off. So you can find me on Twitter at MikoJava. I think the easiest place to find me on the internet is miko.com. So it's miko.com. Super easy to find. And if you go to that website, you can actually find my Twitter, which is right above the fold here. And then if you actually scroll down, you can find my Facebook and my LinkedIn. So you can tweet out to me, or you can follow me here. You can connect to me on social. I'm pretty friendly and always interested to get feedback. And of course, safercrypto.org if you want to protect yourself. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Miko, fantastic. As usual, thank you. I'm really glad to meet you here, to meet you via these online features which are now available through whole the world. And now I am going to turn my relay to my co-host. Ivan, your turn. Go ahead. Your audience is ready.
Hi everybody. Hi, Anna. Hi, Kyle.
Hi.
Yeah, really great to see you all. And so I think we are waiting for Julian and for Alexandra, right?
Yeah, Sasha just told me that she cannot join because the link probably expired because she participated in the previous session like a few hours before. If you have any opportunity to just like share the new link or somehow logged her back.
I think she can definitely join with this link. So you join right now. So
yeah, I did, but she just tried a couple of times.
Sergey, do you have any ideas?
System just logged her off.
I can repeat once more the link here again.
But she tried to join and she was participating.
No problem to join because all the people are joined in the same way. It's not another way to join. I'm not turn it on or off somehow. I will share it with you. Share it with you. With all of you. Here it is. Anna, please have a look. Maybe one letter on just one side missed anyhow. I don't know.
So I'll resend it to her one more time.
Okay. I see Kyle also here. Kyle, turn on your video. We already had seen you yesterday. Today you are also with us.
Pleasure to be here. It's exciting. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm excited to have Anna as our moderator and get ready to talk with a great panel about a great topic.
Yeah, right. So let me check with Julian as well. So
okay, cool.
Anna, Kyle, we are now on air. We have the audience seeing us. They are just our viewers as well. For the beginning, you can introduce yourself. Kyle, I'm sorry. I'm another Kyle, another man. You're the same name. I'm really sorry because I don't see your video yet.
It's okay. It's rare that happens in my life, so I just kind of rolled with it, to be honest with you. I wasn't going to stop you, so... No stress.
Well, I think we will wait a little bit for Alexandra and Julian. So for another two.
Cool.
Let me.
Sure.
Ivan, are they coming or not? I can turn on the music for you if you wish.
Yes, I'm checking with Julian. So Alexandra can join or not, Anna?
She said that she's trying to log again from her mobile. Mm-hmm. We'll see if it's gonna work.
Okay.
I want to remind to our, okay.
Oh, I see Sasha just joined. Hello.
You might be on mute, yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna put us somewhere.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Is Julian gonna join as well?
Ivan somehow disappears, or not? He's here?
I think he's making a quick call to Julian. So
yeah, so Julian is joining, so everything is okay.
Cool.
Okay,
Awesome.
perfect.
Yeah, he's here.
Hey.
Okay, finally, Ivan.
All right,
Yes, the stage is yours. Go ahead.
Finally, we are all here, and so I'm happy to see all of you. And so I believe you are in different locations. Anna, you are in Europe, I think, right? And in San Francisco, Sasha as well. And Julian, you are in LA, right?
Yes, that's right. I'm in Los Angeles right now.
Yeah, great. So let us start this panel with great speakers. So the state of US tech, and I'm giving the word to Anna, who will moderate this session.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan.
Wonderful.
Yeah, perfect. So before we start, do you want to do a quick round of intros, just to give ourselves a quick overview of what you're doing, and if you have any specific focus on any industry or vertical to set the stage. So Kyle, do you want to go first?
Sure. I want to say Julian just turned his camera off, but he looks pretty cool and relaxed. I feel a little jealous for all of us.
Thank you. LA has that quality. LA does that to people.
Thankfully, the Bay Area is warm as well today too. But yeah, thank you, Anna, and thank you again, Ivan and team for inviting us and having me on the panel. Super excited. I'm Kyle Ellicott. I have been either investing or advising or building companies for many years now, and working with funds as well on both sides, either as an investor or as an advisor. And today I focus a lot around the areas of fintech and blockchain, so infrastructure, looking at decentralized applications, dApps, and then a pretty broad spectrum from there in terms of the intersection of entertainment media to marketplaces, and in some cases healthcare and the Internet of Things, where I have a lot of background and experience in as well. So in a broad bucket, a lot of things, but very interested mostly around blockchain, fintech, esports, entertainment, and then the Internet of Things.
Got it. Sounds cool. Super. Mm-hmm. So Julian, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm happy to go next. My name is Julian Zagelman. I'm the founding partner at Jaguar Capital Advisors, and we invest in mostly software as a service, digital health, next generation cloud, and enterprise software startups, typically on the early stage, so seed and Series A investments.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So Sasha, do you want to say a couple of words about yourself?
Sasha, you might be on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. No, I was perfectly set up. Look, I have all these devices, right? But I was in the morning session and they both worked. On this session, it doesn't work. It means to me it's an opportunity for a cool startup to improve Zoom and everything online. And I've been in the technology world, for difficult to say, over 20 years. And more than a decade on the other side of the aisle, that is with the venture capital community. So I have seen more than one down cycle, and I know what the industry did. The first initial reaction is to downsize, stop investments, and really deal with companies existing in your portfolio. But if you look at the name of companies like, I only wrote it out, like Apple, Slack, WhatsApp, Microsoft, Pinterest, Uber, Groupon, Instagram, DocuSign, you can finish the list. They all started during a crisis. So to me, it's a perfect opportunity to look at the existing industries and see how they can be changed, or finding companies that will improve our quality of life. And with that, I think that it's time to actually put a human face on venture capital investments. And this is the first time when it didn't originate in Silicon Valley. Actually, this trend came from Europe, which is unusual. And that's what we call impact investments. That's my new passion.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I also briefly will tell a couple of words about myself. I am a co-founder of Heat Capital, so Sasha's partner, and we're focusing on sustainable innovations, basically. And my background sits on the corporate side, startup side. I also co-founded a nonprofit. So I have like basically 360 degree of experience in the sense, and I do see how those three are merging right now, basically on the intersection of impact investing and sustainability. So super cool. I see that our background is super diverse in many different ways. And before we start talking about trends and the state of the US tech as of now, I want to first us to define if what is basically the position of US tech right now. So is it a thing as like, is it such thing as US tech solely, or is it just a great launch pad for global technologies? What do you think?
Well, if nobody talks, I will. How does it work?
Go for it. I think Julie and I were hitting on mute, but go for it.
Oh, okay. Women power, right? I think that it's our chance to rethink globalization, because before we were mostly talking about, eliminating borders and finding the most efficient way to produce. Now, to me, globalization is truly something that has no borders. It means if you don't need to be physically in one place to revolutionize an industry, it doesn't matter if you're in Silicon Valley or you're somewhere in Brazil or you're somewhere in Poland, it becomes irrelevant. What becomes relevant is how we will go into the next generation of technologies, because everybody agrees that we do not, like, the life will not be back to normal. I never understood the word normal. Like, normal is different for everybody anyway. So what is this new world? And then we know what will not work. Probably for a while, the travel industry, hospitality industries will take a beating. But then what will come in place? Of course, if you are a huge company like Airbnb, your investors will give you a break, and they raise several $100 million just to stay in place. But if you are a new technology, then I would say look at what is happening with education online. If anybody told me that Stanford and Harvard will be doing everything online even 3 months ago, I would just laugh and I say, well, no, but this is reality. So this is a new opportunity, a whole educational industry. If you look at health, we've been investing in companies in digital health for a while, but now health is absolutely different. There are several companies got investments in Silicon Valley as recent as last week. And one is the mental health company, and they're doing it online. And one is preventive data analytics, and it's also in that category. Then you look at the food industry, then you look at the fashion industry, like everything. The companies that are still getting financing are the companies that are changing the way we work and trying to adapt. And I'll stop here because other people have figured out how to unmute themselves.
I would just tack on to that, in terms of the US and US kind of state of technology. So for many years, the United States was a was a proving ground for many technologies and many companies, right? It was one of the flourishing economies. It was a lot of times full of early adopters. It has the tech ecosystems that were above none in the rest of above all, I should say, around the world. And so if you wanted to launch something big and successful in most categories, I'll asterisk that, people came here. Into the US as a whole, tested things out, and then expanded back sometimes locally. In the past few years, we've seen a gradual shift in that as other ecosystems or other markets have started to emerge, and that not necessarily having to be true, right? A company doesn't have to be started in the US to be successful. I think that's obvious, and we've seen that for many years. But the same goes that you don't necessarily have to come to the US to build a successful company. And to Sasha's point, one of the things that I've worked with a lot of startups on is that mentality of, be global, think vertical, and act local. So from day one, you should be thinking about building on a very global scale, no matter where you are. If you're in the smallest city in the smallest country to the biggest and the biggest, doesn't matter. You should be thinking about serving a global market. I had a company that launched a crowdfunding campaign thinking their entire market was here in the US. So that's why they came here. Found out it was in 80 different countries. Completely reshifted their business model, which goes into thinking vertical, right? Focusing on your industry.
Yeah.
Not every industry may be based here in the United States. And again, to Sasha's point, we're seeing that change dramatically right now. Past few years, it's kind of been true, but now we're seeing the shift. And then act local, no matter where you are, you should be building something that can serve your local town, city, state, region, country, so that you can actually get adoption from consumers, right? If you're building something in the US completely for the Chinese market, but you're not actually in China, not the smartest move. And so in terms of there being US tech, I think there's technology and companies for every country and every place in the world. We've seen, again, some of the biggest consumer demand here in the United States for the things that have scaled to be the biggest among those that Sasha mentioned and others that I'm sure Julian will mention as well. So, now things are getting a little bit more globalized, not to buzzword, but things are becoming more decentralized, and it's a little easier. But at the end of the day, you have to have roots on the ground. If you want to build something for the US, you have to be in the US. And not everybody, but some. You want to build something for Indonesia, go to Indonesia. But emerging markets around the world are starting to pop up, and we're starting to see localized technologies or products being built for those markets and those markets alone, and scaling when appropriate, if necessary. So,
right, though, and I think to add to what Sasha and Kyle are saying, I think that times like this are also very interesting because anytime there's a fundamental shift in the way society operates, anytime there is an economic challenge, and undoubtedly we're in one, I think it's a great stress test for business models, and it's also a birthing place for new business models to emerge. So back in 2008, 2009 recession, we saw the birth of a gig economy, sharing economy. We saw emergence of marketplaces. Some of them are with us to stay. Some of them didn't quite prove their longevity. And I think what's happening in the US right now, we see maturation and strengthening of some of those models. And we also see emergence of new types of startups. So I think there's immediate impact, for example, on, pardon me, distance education, bigger emphasis on digital therapeutics and digital health, telemedicine. But I think there's also business models that are going to emerge that we can't even imagine yet. For example, it's clear right now that there is a big issue with commercial real estate, right? People are becoming more decentralized. The work from home movement is becoming permanent. So there is this big oversupply of commercial real estate. And clearly there will be models on how to utilize and repurpose and redeploy that real estate. But I haven't seen anyone yet who, for example, presented something that seems like they have the answer. And that's just one of many. So I'm actually very excited for the next 2 to 3 years, because I feel like we're, again, at the beginning of this new decade cycle. where we'll see, fundamentally new ways of living, doing business, and we'll have a chance to deploy capital into some exciting startups.
Yeah, and there's been a huge progression in infrastructure. I would also add to that on a global scale. So you've got, things like the 5G project that's happening around the world, but you also look at emerging markets in Asia. I mean, you have a whole financial infrastructure around mobile that does not exist to any degree yet here in the United States, right? And the same now starting up in Africa, because the consumer demand is there, the infrastructure is starting to tighten up, and the technology has either caught up or is starting to really surge. So that's another positive to this cycle that we're starting to see as well.
Yeah, I do agree here as well. So if the economy is becoming more decentralized, like around the globe, basically, so right now the influence that it has on the American tech and the US tech, so is it going to become more local? How do you see that? Like, should American startups become more niche in this sense? And should they like serve the society primarily? Or like, do you see that any trend in this area going to happen anytime soon?
It's a good
Again,
question.
if everybody is planned, oh no, somebody.
No. I mean, look, it's a great question, and I'll let Sasha start, but that's a very impactful question. So go ahead, Sasha.
Yeah, I think that's where globalization is all wonderful, but to your point, each country will tackle the situation differently. And if we're looking, saying that China is going about their business this way, it doesn't mean that it will automatically translate to what we're doing in the US. Because if you look at the Chinese economy, it's industry heavy. And if they're going back and they're relaunching factories and whatever they're doing, it's all wonderful. But in the US, we are a service economy mostly. Like whatever we produce and all our technology is about, stuff, how you make people's lives easier. And even with the gig economy, I will separate it in two. It's stuff we do for you and stuff that we bring to you. So the stuff we do for you, obviously, is kind of disappearing because nobody needs a dog walker anymore, and we don't need Uber drivers, right? But if you bring stuff to you, look at what's happening at Amazon and Instacart and all those wonderful stuff. So I would say that if we were to compare US to other countries, I don't see how we will rebuild all the industries. It's not necessary, probably, and I don't want to argue with our president here. But the service building, we can figure out technologies that will make our food supply more efficient. We can figure out the way to do it in a sustainable way. We can figure out how, instead of putting red dye in our meat and making it all unedible, you can do it for those who like meat. You can talk about impossible food. So that is something which will not go away. And I will mention here another wonderful thing that this crisis did to us. Many women who stay at home with young children now actually can find several hours here and there during the day, and they rejoin the workforce. And the same about the people with disabilities. Now you don't need to be driving to the office when you actually can work from home and use your creative talents. So I forgot your question, but I'm sure it was.
Yeah, it answers it very, very well. Yeah.
And I'll add on is just that, consumer behavior and consumer demands are different everywhere. They're not the same. So, part of the question was, should people be focusing locally on their technologies? Yeah. And to Sasha's point, just because something works for a particular market, so for Latin America, for instance, does not mean it's going to work in the US and vice versa. And what has happened recently is a very focused time for that, right? So seeing how someone like Grubhub or Uber Eats or some of the food delivery services are working here has actually been split up, not just by the country, but state by state, city by city, region by region, on how those are all affecting and working very differently. So that's point number one. Point number two, if you are building something, again, you should be starting locally, making sure you're solving a real problem, but you're solving something with consumer demand in the area you're building. And then as you decide, or it's appropriate to scale, then you'll learn how to adapt it, if necessary, to those other markets, other regions, and other places around the world. Yeah. And then point three, again, to Sasha, is that right now, with what has happened, it's clear that we all have very similar problems of things that need to be fixed, right, from a company development standpoint. And then there's some that are very unique to each and every country. And I think what you're going to find, and what we're starting to see already, is some startups rise to that occasion, either shifting what they were doing or starting new to solve those locally, to inspire to maybe solve them globally as well, right? Or those that are already big are starting to reinvest locally here in the US and then into emerging markets to help redefine, test, build those up from a ground up where there's no constraints, and then be able to port those back here. And you're seeing that in finance, where we had, was it about 5, 6, almost $7 billion that Visa, Facebook, and a few others put into a huge mobile e-commerce and payments company in India. We don't have that going on here in the US, but we are seeing that happening in this emerging market where they're able to work and rebuild a new financial infrastructure, and if proven successful, can bring it here a lot easier than some of the constraints that we fight against here. So
I also noticed an interesting phenomenon that you go to emerging markets and they had, for example, mobile payments. That was a really well-developed industry, be it Eastern Europe or Africa or whatever. And we here didn't care that much because we had our credit cards, we had this, we had that. So now I see the reverse, that we're adopting that technology in the US. And then you have the touchless payments, right? And I saw the more sophisticated methods of doing it coming from emerging markets, because that made the loop and came back here. Yeah, that is to your point, that you can start it locally, but if it has a potential, it becomes a global phenomenon right away. Yeah. I think Julian is having too much fun. Julian, show us.
He's loving that sunshine.
No, thank you. I think that I think that it's also definitely interesting to see that there is another thing that I think is influencing what type of problems entrepreneurs are tackling is also, I see that there is a trend towards bigger sustainability in the business, both sustainability in terms of impact on the environment and society, but also just general viability. So it's interesting to see that the cyclical nature of venture capital going from, pursue growth at all expense, build a business that can grow the fastest and the largest, and, build it when they come, as was popular in the late 90s. And then, we see some examples with, big companies, large, the WeWorks, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, that are great companies, amazing companies, but from a fundamental economic standpoint are not quite sustainable without outside influx of capital. All of a sudden, we see this tide shifting to entrepreneurs being told by VCs, early stage and late stage, that look, the next round may not be there anymore. It may not be at the valuation that you're going to be happy with. It may not be in the amount that you're going to be happy with. So please, focus on building a business that can sustain itself. And as a result, it'll be interesting to see. I think there might be more fragmentation. So more competitors building, nice, sizable businesses, but less of that winner takes all approach. I also think it'll be interesting to see how that impacts the venture capital community. It's almost like a return to some type of a historical model, what venture capital used to be, I believe, in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Way before my time, but that's, what some of my mentors have shared with me, versus, what we came to embrace venture capital to be in the last decade, right, where there's proliferation of unicorns. So I think that'll be interesting as well to see how big will this future startups get. will there be a bigger shift towards basically, you know, paying your own way and building the business that's sustainable after 2-3 years versus building the largest business you can with the understanding it might take you a decade to get the profitability.
Well, and that leads to potentially more acquisitions as well, right? So you've now got ecosystems being built versus silos. So companies that are just building it, to Julian's point, you know, we want to be the biggest. Okay, from a VC's perspective, where's the exit, right? Where's the return? As opposed to now you start building an ecosystem that can kind of balance and flourish and push everybody up. And to Julian's point, is sustainable. Now you've got opportunities for liquidity, but also it puts people, as he said, in a position that things aren't guaranteed. And not that they always were, but you know, a lot of times there were situations where that could have been promised, and now it's a little different story. And even furthermore, you've got diligence processes now, as people can't necessarily meet in person still. That diligence process is a lot more deep and requiring a lot more questioning and requiring a lot more thought process. For some of the VCs I've talked to and some of the investments I've even looked at, what maybe once had been a very quick decision has taken a little bit more time. Not necessarily because everyone has it, but now you've got more time to review those types of things. And so you're diving through questions on a more methodical level that you may not have before, because to everyone's point, like it's a different game, short or long. This is a different process going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Do agree here. So actually, we are really approaching the end of our talk right now, and I want to be mindful of the time and the agenda after us. So do you want to quickly summarize like one key trend that is going to be really important in the upcoming decade for the US tech?
Julian, you start. You're the one that's gone last all the time, and you obviously look the most comfortable. So you start this off.
Absolutely. Well, I think that one of the biggest trends for the US is going to be de-urbanization, as crazy as it sounds, coupled with a huge decentralization of workforce and more remote teams and also remote living. So I think creating this global infrastructure, allowing people to work globally but live locally, and repopulate some of those, you know, further satellite cities and some of those further suburbs that have been abandoned in the late decade in favor of large cities. I think that's going to be a big trend that I'm excited about.
Sounds exciting. Cal, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm excited probably about too much to add on to what Julian said. But, you know, I think some of the things that what has happened and we're going to see going forward is people kind of rethinking where they and how they spend their time from a VC perspective, but also from an entrepreneurial perspective, or just from a work perspective, work life in general. And I think that's going to really fuel this, you know, being global while local type opportunity, where you could see someone working for multiple different organizations around the world doing multiple different things, creating economies that we haven't even thought about. You know, the gig economy we had in 2008 that started, I think we're going to see a dramatic surge in that, but very, very distributed on how that plays out, which will be exciting. And all the verticals we've talked about, I think, are going to be taking off.
Sasha, do you want to add a cherry on the pie?
I actually don't think we can predict anything. You know, if you look back at the predictions, what people thought will happen 10 years ago, rarely they could guess. So I will stick to my philosophy that in venture capital, we support entrepreneurs. And while we're talking, Elon Musk is launching another rocket, okay? Prices, no prices, he'll do what he does. You know, Jeff Bezos will continue doing what he's doing. And so I will just be on the lookout for those talented entrepreneurs who are unstoppable. And if they decide they will change the whole way we eat, and I know I believe in that entrepreneur, that's whom I'll support. Now, which industries will appear? I'll tell you the ones that are most adaptive to change. They will appear. The ones who will say, no, that's how we know and we won't change anything, well, we know what happens to them. So my recommendation to entrepreneurs is, if you're passionate about what you're doing, continue doing it. But look around and see what's happening in the world. And if you specialize in, I don't know, building a better engine for a car that consumes oil and gas, whatever, then probably you want to change that to something else. But otherwise, yeah, and keep talking to investors, because there's always money available as long as you're building something for the future. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very, very exciting. So thank you so much, guys.
Great.
That was a very interesting talk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Excellent talk.
Yeah, thank you very much.
See you
And
next time.
happy to host you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks,
Have
everybody.
a great week.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Time.
you.
Say bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.